In the heart of Colorado's frozen wilderness, a tech billionaire's smart home became his digital tomb. Magnus Thorne thought his cutting-edge security system would protect him from any threat. But what happens when the killer doesn't need to break in because they're already speaking in your own voice? This is the story of a murder so technologically advanced that it fooled every detective, every camera, and every digital witness, until one panicked moment revealed that even artificial intelligence can't replicate human fear. The blizzard had been raging for 18 hours when the emergency call came through at 6:47 a.m. on that bitter February morning. Detective Sarah Chen pulled her unmarked sedan through the wrought iron gates of the Thorne estate, her windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the thick Colorado snow. The mansion rose from the mountainside like a glass and steel monument to technological ambition, its smart windows automatically adjusting their opacity as her headlights swept across the facade. Magnus Thorne had built his fortune on making the impossible seem effortless, and his home reflected that philosophy. Every surface gleamed with the quiet confidence of cutting-edge automation. Motion sensors tracked Chen's approach, while security cameras rotated to maintain visual contact. Even in death, Thorne's digital empire continued its silent surveillance. Officer Jake Morrison met her at the front door, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Bodies in the Home Office, Detective. No signs of forced entry, no struggle. Looks like natural causes." His voice carried the weary resignation of a cop who'd seen too many wealthy men succumb to stress and excess. "Victim 62 found by his housekeeper this morning. She's pretty shaken up." Chen stamped the snow from her boots and stepped into a foyer that belonged more in a science fiction film than a Colorado mountain home. The walls were lined with interactive displays, showing weather patterns, security feeds, and stock market fluctuations. "Any medical history?" "That's where it gets interesting," Morrison replied, leading her through corridors that seemed to anticipate their movement, lights brightening ahead of them and dimming behind. Guy was obsessed with his health, had one of those fancy fitness trackers, regular checkups, organic everything. His physician says his heart was in perfect condition just last month. The Home Office was a temple to digital organization. Magnus Thorne sat slumped over his desk, his silver hair catching the soft glow from multiple monitors. The screens displayed financial data, security camera feeds, and what appeared to be voice recognition software running in the background. Everything suggested a man who had simply worked himself to death in the middle of a winter storm. But Chen had learned to trust her instincts, and something about the scene felt choreographed. The coffee cup sat precisely 2 inches from Thorne's right hand, despite the fact that his medical records indicated he was left-handed. The timestamp on his computer showed activity until 2:17 a.m., yet the room's climate control system registered a temperature drop at 11:43 p.m., exactly when human body heat would no longer influence the sophisticated sensors. "Has anyone touched anything?" Chen asked, pulling on latex gloves as she circled the desk. "Just the housekeeper, to check for a pulse, and the paramedics to confirm death. Everything else is exactly as she found it." Morrison paused at the doorway, watching Chen examine the scene with the methodical precision of a surgeon. "The whole house is locked down tight. Fingerprint scanners, voice recognition, the works. System logs show no unauthorized access in the past week." Chen knelt beside the body, noting the absence of the usual signs of cardiac distress. No clutching at the chest, no evidence of pain or struggle. Magnus Thorne looked almost peaceful, as if he had simply decided to rest his eyes for a moment. But peaceful deaths rarely occurred in the middle of urgent financial transactions, and the screens around them told a story of a man racing against time to complete something important. The smart home's central control panel blinked steadily on the wall, its green light indicating all systems were functioning normally. "Voice command ready," it displayed, waiting for instructions that would never come. Chen found herself wondering what secrets lived in those digital logs, what conversations the house had witnessed, and what truths its artificial intelligence might have recorded. As she photographed the scene, a subtle detail caught her attention. The victim's smartphone lay face down on the desk, its screen cracked, not shattered from impact, but showing the hairline fracture pattern of extreme pressure, as if someone had gripped it with desperate force. The phone's voice memo app was still open, stopped mid-recording at a timestamp of 2:16 a.m., just 1 minute before the computer registered its final activity. The blizzard continued to howl outside, sealing the estate in a cocoon of white silence. But inside this technological fortress, Chen sensed she was standing at the center of something far more complex than a simple heart attack. In a house where every word was recorded, every movement tracked, and every digital breath monitored, someone had found a way to commit what might be the perfect crime. The question wasn't whether Magnus Thorne had been murdered. Chen's instincts were already convinced of that. The question was how someone had managed to kill a man inside the most secure smart home in Colorado without leaving a single trace of their presence. The medical examiner's preliminary report arrived as Chen was reviewing the estate's security footage for the third time. Dr. Elena Vasquez had found elevated levels of digitalis in Thorne's system, not enough to kill a healthy man immediately, but sufficient to trigger cardiac arrhythmia in someone under extreme stress. The toxin occurred naturally in foxglove plants, common in Colorado gardens, but the precise dosage suggested deliberate administration rather than accidental poisoning. "So we're officially calling this homicide," Morrison said, settling into the chair across from Chen's temporary command post in Thorne's living room. The house's AI system had automatically adjusted the lighting and temperature for optimal working conditions, a ghostly reminder of its deceased owner's attention to detail. Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the security monitor displaying the previous night's footage. "The question is how someone managed to dose him and leave no trace. Look at this." She rewound the feed to show Thorne entering his office at 8:30 p.m., alone and apparently healthy. 43 cameras throughout all. The property? Motion sensors in every room and not a single unauthorized person captured on any feed. The investigation into Thorne's personal life had revealed a man whose success had cost him most meaningful relationships. His tech empire, Prometheus Systems, specialized in AI-powered security solutions that had revolutionized digital privacy protection. Ironically, the man who had made fortunes protecting others' secrets had accumulated plenty of his own. 3 individuals emerged as primary suspects, each with powerful motives and seemingly unshakable alibis. Kieran Blackwood, Thorne's business partner and co-founder of Prometheus Systems, stood to inherit controlling interest in the company worth approximately $200 million. Their partnership agreement included a buyout clause that would trigger upon either partner's death, and recent board meetings had revealed significant disagreements about the company's future direction. Blackwood's alibi placed him in his Denver penthouse, supported by GPS tracking from his vehicle, time-stamped keycard access to his building, and video calls with associates that continued until well past midnight. Blackwood was pushing for a merger with a Chinese tech consortium, Chen explained to Morrison, as they reviewed financial documents. Thorne was absolutely opposed, said it would compromise their security protocols. The argument apparently got heated enough that witnesses heard shouting from the boardroom last week. The second suspect carried even deeper emotional wounds. Iris Thorne Valdez, Magnus's estranged daughter, had been fighting a bitter legal battle over her late mother's estate for 3 years. Court documents revealed that Magnus had used his legal resources to tie up inheritance funds that rightfully belonged to Iris, forcing her to struggle financially while her father's wealth grew exponentially. She had motive, means through her knowledge of her father's medical conditions and habits, but her alibi seemed equally solid. Hotel records showed Iris had checked into a Denver luxury suite at 4 p.m. the previous day, with time-stamped room service orders, spa appointments, and security footage showing her in the hotel bar until after 1 a.m. Credit card transactions and witness statements from hotel staff corroborated her presence throughout the critical time frame. "The daughter angle bothers me," Chen admitted, studying Iris's photograph on the evidence board. "She's a software engineer, graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science. If anyone would understand her father's security systems, it would be her." The third suspect presented the most intimate access to the victim. Phoenix Sterling had served as Magnus Thorne's personal assistant for 7 years, managing everything from travel arrangements to confidential business communications. Sterling possessed comprehensive knowledge of Thorne's daily routines, medical information, and security protocols. Recent employment records revealed that Thorne had been planning to terminate Sterling's position due to suspected information leaks to competitors. Sterling's alibi placed him at a technology conference in Boulder, where he was attending workshops on behalf of his employer. Registration records, hotel booking confirmations, and security footage from the conference center showed him participating in seminars and networking events throughout the evening and into the early morning hours. 3 suspects, 3 perfect alibis, Morrison observed, studying the timeline Chen had constructed on the whiteboard. But somebody managed to get close enough to Thorne to poison him with a substance that takes hours to become lethal. Chen stood before the evidence board, her mind working through the possibilities. Each suspect had the motive, opportunity, and knowledge necessary to commit the murder, but their digital alibis created a seemingly impossible puzzle. In a world where every movement generated electronic traces, how had someone managed to be in 2 places at once? The answer, she suspected, lay in the very technology that Thorne had surrounded himself with. His smart home represented the pinnacle of digital security, but it also created new vulnerabilities that traditional investigative methods might not detect. Every system could be hacked, every recording could be manipulated, and every digital witness could potentially lie. As the blizzard continued to isolate the estate from the outside world, Chen realized she was dealing with more than just a murder case. She was confronting the first crime of a new era, one where the boundary between digital reality and physical truth had been deliberately blurred by someone who understood both domains with deadly precision. The house's AI system chimed softly, announcing that all security protocols remained active and functional. But Chen was beginning to understand that in Magnus Thorne's digital fortress, the greatest threat hadn't come from outside the walls. It had come from someone who knew exactly how to make the technology itself become an accomplice to murder. The revelation came at 2:47 a.m., during Chen's 5th consecutive hour of analyzing the house's digital logs. While Morrison slept fitfully on the living room couch, surrounded by evidence files and cold coffee cups, Chen had been methodically combing through terabytes of data stored in Thorne's central server system. The smart home had recorded everything: temperature fluctuations, air quality readings, electrical consumption patterns, and most importantly, every sound that had occurred within its walls. "Morrison, wake up," Chen called, her voice tight with excitement. "I found something." The audio files were embedded deep within the house's voice recognition system, designed to respond to Magnus Thorne's commands with near-perfect accuracy. The AI had been programmed to distinguish his vocal patterns from those of visitors, household staff, and potential intruders. But hidden among the routine voice commands from the night of the murder, Chen discovered something that made her pulse quicken. At 11:38 p.m., the system had recorded Thorne's voice saying, "Adjust office temperature to 72 degrees. Standard request," exactly the kind of command the billionaire issued, dozens of times daily. But when Chen ran the audio through spectral analysis software, subtle anomalies emerged in the voice pattern. The frequency distribution was almost perfect, but microscopic variations in breathing patterns and subtle digital artifacts suggested artificial generation. "Someone cloned his voice," Chen whispered, staring at the waveform display on her laptop screen. "They created fake audio commands to manipulate the house's systems." Morrison rubbed his eyes and leaned over her shoulder, studying the complex audio analysis. "Is that even possible?" "More than possible. It's commercially available technology. AI voice cloning can replicate anyone's speech patterns with just a few minutes of sample audio." Thorne's voice was all over the internet, in interviews, conference calls, promotional videos. Someone with the right software could have synthesized his voice, saying anything they wanted. The implications began cascading through Chen's mind, like digital dominoes falling. If the killer could replicate Thorne's voice, they could potentially control every aspect of the smart home remotely. Door locks, security cameras, environmental controls, even the victim's personal devices, all could be manipulated using synthesized voice commands that the AI system would accept as authentic. Chen dove deeper into the audio logs, searching for more anomalies. She found them scattered throughout the evening, voice commands that sounded perfectly normal, but carried the telltale digital signatures of artificial generation. At 9:15 p.m., dim living room lights to 40%. At 10:22 p.m., activate privacy mode in office. At 11:43 p.m., disable motion sensors in East Corridor. They were systematically taking control of the house, Chen realized, mapping the timeline of fake commands. Each voice instruction was designed to create opportunities, darkening areas to avoid cameras, disabling sensors to move undetected, activating privacy modes to prevent recording in specific rooms. But the most chilling discovery waited in the deeper system files. The house's central AI had logged an unusual sequence of commands between 1:30 and 2 a.m. during the critical time frame when Thorne was dying. Someone had used his cloned voice to access his personal computer, transfer files to external storage, and even compose emails that would be sent automatically after his death. Morrison was fully awake now, his investigator's instincts sharpened by the magnitude of the revelation. So one of our suspects used voice cloning to create their alibi while actually being here to commit the murder. It's more sophisticated than that, Chen replied, pulling up additional files. Look at these email timestamps. The killer used Thorne's voice to send messages that would corroborate their own whereabouts, conference confirmations, hotel reservations, even personal communications, all designed to strengthen their digital alibi while they were physically present at the murder scene. The technology required for such an elaborate deception wasn't amateur level. Professional voice cloning software, advanced knowledge of smart home systems, and the technical expertise to manipulate digital evidence in real time pointed to someone with significant cybersecurity training. All three suspects possessed the necessary skills, but one had access to something even more valuable than technical knowledge. Chen accessed the house's backup servers, searching for the original voice samples that would have been needed to create the cloned audio. What she found confirmed her darkest suspicions. The synthesis algorithms had been trained on Thorne's own voice security protocols, the very recordings he used to authorize access to his most sensitive systems. The killer didn't just clone his voice, Chen said, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she traced digital footprints through the system's memory banks. They used his security voice patterns, the specific phrases and intonations he used for financial transactions, system overrides, emergency protocols, someone with access to his most private vocal signatures. The hunt through the digital evidence led Chen to a startling discovery in the system's error logs. At 2:16 a.m., just minutes before Thorne's death, the voice recognition system had registered a command it couldn't process, an authentic human voice, filled with panic and desperation, trying to override the very commands that were killing him. The recording was fragmented, partially corrupted by the system's security protocols, but Chen could make out fragments of genuine terror. "Can't breathe. Something wrong with... help me." The vocal patterns matched Thorne's authentic signature perfectly. No digital artifacts, no synthetic anomalies. This was the real Magnus Thorne, dying and desperate, trying to use his own voice to save his life, while an artificial version of that same voice continued issuing commands that ensured his death. The killer made one mistake, Chen realized, her heart racing as the pieces fell into place. They were so focused on using synthetic voice commands to control the crime scene that they forgot about this fragment of authentic audio, Thorne's actual dying words. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Hidden among the system's communication logs, Chen discovered that the panic recording had been preceded by another voice, not Thorne's and definitely not synthetic. Someone had spoken aloud in the office during the critical time frame, their words captured by the hypersensitive audio pickups built into every room. The voice was brief, barely a whisper, but clear enough for identification. "I'm sorry, Magnus. It's the only way." Chen enhanced the audio, running it through voice recognition software that compared it against the vocal patterns of their three primary suspects. The match was conclusive, undeniable, and completely unexpected. The killer had revealed themselves in a moment of human weakness, leaving behind the one piece of evidence that no amount of technological sophistication could erase: their own authentic voice, speaking words of remorse at the moment of murder. The voice match hit Chen like a digital thunderbolt. Phoenix Sterling, Magnus Thorne's trusted personal assistant, had spoken those whispered words of apology in the moments before his employer's death. But the revelation only deepened the mystery. Sterling's conference alibi remained virtually unshakable, supported by multiple independent sources and continuous digital verification. Chen spent the next 6 hours systematically deconstructing Sterling's timeline, searching for the technological sleight of hand that would explain how he could be simultaneously present at a Boulder conference and committing murder in his employer's home office. The answer, when it finally emerged, revealed a level of digital deception that redefined the possibilities of modern criminal planning. He wasn't just cloning Thorne's voice, Chen explained to Morrison, as dawn broke over the snow-covered estate. He was cloning his entire digital presence. "Look at this." The evidence lived in the metadata, those invisible digital fingerprints that accompanied every electronic transaction. Sterling had used his administrative access to Thorne's systems to create what cybersecurity experts called a digital twin, a comprehensive simulation of a person's online presence that could generate authentic-seeming evidence of their activities. The conference registration had been legitimate, but Sterling had employed sophisticated deepfake technology to create video footage of himself attending workshops and networking events. Motion capture data from previous conferences, combined with AI-generated facial mapping, had produced dozens of video clips showing him participating in activities he never actually attended. The registration scanner was hacked, Chen discovered, examining the conference center's digital logs. Every time someone else scanned their badge, the system also logged Sterling as present. He created a phantom attendance record that made it appear he was actively participating throughout the evening. The hotel records revealed similar manipulation. Sterling had, indeed, booked a room, but he'd never physically occupied it. Instead, he'd used IoT vulnerabilities in the hotel's smart room systems to simulate occupancy, triggering automatic charges for room service, adjusting climate control settings, and even generating fake wireless internet usage patterns that suggested normal guest activity. Morrison shook his head in amazement. So, he was creating digital evidence of being in Boulder while actually driving here through the blizzard. More clever than that, Chen replied, pulling up GPS tracking data. He knew the storm would provide cover for transportation inconsistencies. His car's GPS shows the journey to Boulder, but the return trip data has been corrupted, supposedly due to weather interference. In reality, he spoofed the GPS signals to hide his actual movements. The true genius of Sterling's plan lay in its exploitation of human psychology and technological assumptions. In an age where digital evidence was considered more reliable than human testimony, investigators naturally trusted electronic records over physical possibilities. Sterling had weaponized that trust, creating a comprehensive digital alibi that seemed impossible to challenge. But every perfect system had flaws, and Sterling's elaborate deception contained fatal vulnerabilities that Chen was methodically exposing. The voice cloning technology, while sophisticated, required enormous processing power that left traces in computer memory and network traffic logs. Sterling had used Thorne's own servers to generate the synthetic audio, thinking the computational load would be hidden among the billionaire's routine digital activities. He made his first mistake right here, Chen said, highlighting unusual server activity spikes that coincided with the fake voice commands. The system was working overtime to process the artificial speech generation, creating resource consumption patterns that don't match Thorne's normal usage. The second error was more subtle but equally damning. Sterling's knowledge of Thorne's voice security patterns was comprehensive, but not perfect. The cloned voice had replicated the billionaire's speaking cadence and tonal qualities, but missed microscopic variations in pronunciation that occurred when Thorne was under stress or fatigue. The AI had generated a version of Magnus Thorne that sounded more alert and composed than the real man would have been after working 14-hour days for weeks. Sterling knew him well enough to replicate his professional speaking voice, Chen realized, but he didn't account for how Thorne sounded when he was exhausted and under pressure. The artificial voice was too perfect. The investigation's breakthrough came when Chen discovered Sterling's preparation timeline. For months, he had been systematically collecting voice samples from Thorne's private conversations, recording phone calls, video, conferences, and personal interactions. The audio files were hidden in encrypted folders on company servers, disguised as routine backup data, but the most damning evidence lay in Sterling's financial records. He had purchased sophisticated voice cloning software through a series of anonymous cryptocurrency transactions, along with deepfake video generation tools and GPS spoofing equipment. The digital paper trail, carefully hidden behind multiple layers of encryption and proxy servers, revealed months of premeditation. He planned this murder like a military operation, Morrison observed, studying the evidence timeline Chen had constructed. Every detail calculated, every contingency covered. Almost every contingency, Chen corrected. He forgot about his own emotional response to committing murder. The authentic voice fragment, Sterling's whispered apology, had been captured by accident. In the moments before Thorne's death, as the digitalis began, affecting his heart rhythm, Sterling had spoken aloud without realizing the house's audio systems were still recording. The words weren't meant for anyone to hear. They were the spontaneous expression of guilt from someone who had convinced himself that murder was a necessary business decision. Chen had run voice stress analysis on the recording, confirming that Sterling's whispered words carried genuine emotional distress. Unlike his carefully crafted digital deceptions, this moment of authentic human feeling had been impossible to fake or control. The motive became clear when Chen accessed Thorne's private files, using voice commands with the authentic audio samples she'd recovered. Sterling hadn't just been facing termination, he had been embezzling funds from Prometheus systems for years, using his administrative access to siphon money into offshore accounts. Thorne had discovered the theft and was preparing to file criminal charges that would have destroyed Sterling's life and landed him in federal prison. He killed Thorne to prevent his own exposure, Chen concluded, and used the most advanced technology available to create what he thought was the perfect alibi. But he couldn't engineer away his own conscience. As Chen prepared to make the arrest, she reflected on the implications of Sterling's crime. He had committed the first murder of the true digital age, a killing where the primary evidence existed not in physical traces, but in the invisible world of data streams, algorithmic manipulation, and synthetic reality. It was a glimpse into a future where the line between authentic and artificial evidence would become increasingly difficult to distinguish. But Sterling's downfall proved that even in an age of perfect digital deception, human nature remained the ultimate constant. Technology could replicate voices, fabricate alibis, and manipulate evidence, but it couldn't erase the authentic moment when a killer's conscience spoke louder than their carefully constructed lies. The arrest came at dawn, with Phoenix Sterling still maintaining his conference alibi, even as Chen presented him with the digital evidence that unraveled his elaborate deception. Sitting in the interrogation room at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, Sterling appeared almost relieved that his technological house of cards had finally collapsed. "You want to know the ironic thing?" Sterling said, his voice carrying the exhausted tone of someone who had spent months living a lie. "I developed most of the voice cloning protocols myself. Magnus hired me specifically because of my expertise in AI security systems. I was supposed to protect him from exactly the kind of attack I ended up using against him." Chen studied the man across the metal table, noting how different he seemed from the confident professional she had investigated. The weight of his crime had stripped away his technological armor, revealing someone who had convinced himself that murder was simply another problem to be solved through superior digital engineering. "Walk me through it," Chen said. From the beginning, Sterling's confession revealed the methodical planning that had gone into creating what he believed would be the perfect untraceable crime. For 8 months, he had been systematically stealing from Prometheus systems, using his administrative privileges to redirect payments from corporate clients into accounts he controlled. The scheme had netted him nearly $3 million, but Magnus Thorne's obsessive attention to financial details had eventually uncovered the discrepancies. "He called me into his office 3 weeks ago," Sterling recalled, his hands trembling slightly. "Showed me printouts of the transactions, bank records, everything. Said he was giving me 24 hours to return the money before he contacted the FBI. I begged him to reconsider. Told him about my mother's medical bills, my sister's college tuition. All true, by the way, but Magnus was absolute. He said trust was the foundation of everything we built, and I had destroyed that." The confrontation had triggered Sterling's transition from embezzler to murderer. His intimate knowledge of Thorne's routines, medical conditions, and security systems provided the means, while the threat of federal prosecution supplied the desperate motivation. But Sterling's true weapon was his expertise in the very technology designed to protect his employer. "The voice cloning took weeks to perfect," Sterling continued. "I had access to thousands of hours of Magnus's recorded conversations, board meetings, client calls, personal messages. The AI learning algorithms needed extensive training data to replicate not just his voice, but his speech patterns, his vocabulary choices, even his breathing rhythms." Chen listened as Sterling described the technical complexity of his plan. He had created multiple synthetic voice models, each calibrated for different scenarios: the professional tone for business commands, the casual inflection for personal conversations, even stress patterns for emergency situations. The artificial intelligence had learned to speak like Magnus Thorne better than Thorne himself. "The night of the murder, I drove to the estate during the blizzard," Sterling explained. "I knew the storm would provide cover and create alibis for any Transportation inconsistencies. I had been monitoring Magnus's work schedule for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity when he would be alone and working late. The murder itself had been coldly calculated. Sterling had used his access codes to enter the house undetected, then employed the cloned voice commands to systematically disable security systems and manipulate environmental controls. The digitalis had been extracted from foxglove plants in Thorne's own garden, processed into a concentrated form that could be absorbed through skin contact. I coated his coffee cup handle, Sterling admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He always grabbed his cup the same way, always took a sip while reviewing financial reports. The poison took hours to build up to lethal levels in his system. Time for me to complete the digital deception and establish my conference alibi. But Sterling's technological mastery hadn't prepared him for the emotional reality of watching someone die. As the digitalis began affecting Thorne's heart, Sterling had witnessed his employer's growing confusion and distress. The billionaire had tried to call for help, tried to access his medical monitoring systems, but Sterling's synthetic voice commands had systematically blocked every attempt at rescue. "That's when I made my mistake," Sterling said, finally addressing the whispered apology that had revealed his presence. "I saw him struggling, trying to breathe, and for a moment I forgot about the recording systems. I spoke without thinking, just words of regret that came from somewhere I didn't know still existed." Chen recognized the psychological phenomenon Sterling was describing. Even the most coldly calculated murderers often experienced moments of unexpected empathy for their victims. The whispered, "I'm sorry, Magnus, it's the only way," had been Sterling's conscience breaking through his carefully constructed emotional barriers. "You could have stopped," Chen pointed out. "Called an ambulance, reversed the voice commands, let the security systems function normally." Sterling shook his head. By then it was too late. The poison was already in his system, and any attempt to save him would have exposed everything I'd done. I convinced myself that finishing the plan was the only way to avoid destroying more lives, my families, my employees, everyone who depended on the money I'd stolen. The confession revealed the final elements of Sterling's digital deception. After Thorne's death, he had used the cloned voice to send posthumous emails, transfer files, and even record a fake will amendment that would have benefited Sterling financially. The synthetic voice had continued operating even after its original owner had died, creating the illusion that Magnus Thorne had remained active and alive hours after his actual death. "I thought I had engineered the perfect crime," Sterling concluded. "Every digital trace pointing away from me, every piece of evidence supporting my alibi. I forgot that in a world of artificial voices and synthetic evidence, authentic human emotion would stand out like a beacon." As Chen prepared to conclude the interrogation, she reflected on the broader implications of Sterling's crime. He had committed murder in the digital age's new frontier, where the boundaries between real and artificial evidence were increasingly blurred, but his downfall proved that even the most sophisticated technological deception couldn't completely eliminate the human element that remained at the heart of every crime. Sterling's whispered apology had been more than just a confession. It was proof that conscience, guilt, and authentic human feeling remained immune to digital manipulation. In a world where voices could be cloned and evidence could be fabricated, the most powerful truth had come from a moment of unguarded human emotion. 6 months after Phoenix Sterling's conviction for first-degree murder, Detective Sarah Chen found herself standing once again in Magnus Thorne's smart home office. The estate had been sold to a tech consortium, but the new owners had preserved the room exactly as it was on the night of the murder. A digital crime scene frozen in time as a reminder of technology's double-edged nature. Sterling had received a life sentence without possibility of parole, becoming the first person convicted of murder. Through AI voice manipulation, his case had sparked international debates about digital evidence, artificial intelligence ethics, and the reliability of electronic testimony in criminal proceedings. Law enforcement agencies worldwide were now scrambling to develop protocols for detecting synthetic media in criminal investigations. "The irony is perfect," Chen mused to Officer Morrison as they reviewed the final case files. Magnus Thorne built his fortune protecting people from digital deception, only to be killed by the very technology he helped create. The Prometheus Systems company had survived the scandal, though barely. Kieran Blackwood had implemented new security protocols specifically designed to detect AI-generated content, turning the company's tragic experience into a competitive advantage. Iris Thorne Valdez had inherited her father's estate and used part of the fortune to establish a foundation researching the ethical implications of artificial intelligence in criminal justice. But the case's most lasting impact lay in its revelation of a new category of crime. Sterling's murder had demonstrated that in the digital age, the most dangerous weapons weren't guns or knives. They were algorithms, synthetic voices, and the ability to manipulate reality itself through technological expertise. Cases like this are going to become more common, Chen observed, watching as the house's AI system continued its eternal vigil, monitoring empty rooms with artificial vigilance. We're entering an era where seeing isn't believing, where hearing isn't truth, and where the most convincing evidence might be completely fabricated. The house's voice recognition system chimed softly, as it had done thousands of times before. "Voice command ready," it announced in its neutral, artificial tone. But now Chen heard something different in those words, not just the promise of technological convenience, but the potential for digital deception that could turn any home into a crime scene, any voice into a weapon. As they prepared to leave the estate for the final time, Chen's phone buzzed with a new case assignment. Another suspicious death, another smart home, another victim whose trust in technology had potentially become their downfall. The future of criminal investigation was arriving faster than anyone had anticipated, and Detective Sarah Chen was becoming its reluctant pioneer. Sterling's whispered apology continued to echo in the digital memory banks, a human voice preserved forever among the artificial ones, authentic emotion captured in a world increasingly filled with synthetic truth. It was a reminder that even in the age of artificial intelligence, the most powerful evidence still came from the irreducibly human moments when conscience spoke louder than calculation. In Magnus Thorne's digital tomb, the voice recognition system waited patiently for commands that would never come, while somewhere in the data streams, the last authentic words of a murdered man remained preserved as digital evidence of technology's greatest vulnerability, its inability to replicate the unpredictable complexity of human nature itself.